come back Monday and hopefully be able to kill it. But it's still like Heroic Sylvanas. Like I'd much rather go 3 of 10 Mythic than try to do Heroic Sylvanas at this point.
Yeah, how many players do you have in the raid when you do Sylvanas Heroic?
That's, I think, part of the problem is that we come in here with like 26 people, and I've heard if you're gonna do Sylvanas, you need to do it in like a smaller, like try to keep it around like 20 or less or something.
Because we, like the first week, when there was only normal heroic, we only raid 2 days in theory, but we raided Thursday, played up to Sylvanas. I don't remember, but we like wiped in Sylvanas, and then we wiped all day on Sylvanas again on Monday after doing the normal mode clear as well for like socket items. And then we said, you know what, we have to raid tomorrow if we want to kill Sylvanas. So we started raiding on Tuesday, which is like a third raiding that you usually don't do. And we were just vibing. People were like mad that they had to be here on the third day a week, you know, and people were just upset. And at some point we decided to cut down people and then do another run, right? So like we just removed like 4 or 5 people to cut down to like 19. And then we said after we killed it here, we're gonna do another run where we just replace 4 players with like the other 4 that were outside. And we killed it with 19. It seemed quite a lot easier, like actually a lot easier, especially phase 1. There's so many less domination, like chains we have to deal with. And last phase we just have more space to spread out.
One of the more ruthless Maw Swarm draws
people,
close.
Right?
Be
So
ready.
That would be actually cool if your platform scaled with the number of people.
That would be fun. That would be hilarious. But yeah, like some ability, like some bosses like Sylvanas, where space is really important. Having more players, like in a heroic spin, that's not something they can scale properly, right? They can scale the HP and the incoming damage. The space is space, right? So yeah, that's a problem with Sylvanas for sure.
This is another very spicy pull. Like, All right, like I said,
pretty low. They might be able to finish it off.
No, I guarantee you they're at the point now where people aren't allowed to have any fun.
Yep, fun is over now.
Fun's done. Gingy's still kind of smiling, but I can tell that you look at him, he's like scared that somebody's gonna see him smile. It's like, no, I'm not. I just had my nose tickled. There you go.
No, it's the kind of smile where you know when someone makes a mistake in like professional sports and they're just like clapping or like, no, you did good, you know, like they don't want to like be like mad or have like a, you know, like look upset or anything, because otherwise they're gonna be upset and then the whole mood is gone, right? So you're like clapping, like, yeah, you did well, nice try, and that's sort of what Gingy's doing right there. He's like smiling and he's like, it's okay guys, but he's crying on the inside.
Yes.
Yep. He's upset.
I've actually seen, you know, Mike's one of those guys that he does get like ultra competitive, and you don't necessarily see that all the time. Like he's, you know, when he's on stream and he's just kind of hanging out, he's a very chill guy. But you get him in the actual events where he cares about the performance, and that dude is laser focused. So I don't think I've ever seen, you know, I know there's a few guys in this World First scene that have a reputation for their reactions to failure. Jimmy comes to mind. He's a guy that I believe has turned off his PC more than a few times from slamming his desk. But, you know, Mike is right up there with folks. Like, there's been a few times in Race World First where, you know, he would die on the fight, and you would hear him behind you, like, start moving around, and you like turned around because you're like, is he gonna flip the table over?
To the victor
like,
goes the
do I need
anima.
to clear out of the room?
Claim your power, Maw Walkers.
Yeah, he definitely, like, he's incredibly competitive. I think all of them are, obviously. I think all of those players that are in the World First guilds that are competing in the MDI, like, I don't know, like, all of them just, obviously they want to win. And I guess some more than others, but I think Gingy's definitely one of those, like, more than others type people that wants to win even if there's, like, absolutely nothing on the line, you know, like, he just wants to get that #1 spot, even if it's, like, you know, like a game where they're already #1 anyway, so it doesn't really matter, or...
Beware.
Always wants to be at #1. It's a good mentality to have, for sure, but sometimes
Beware.
you have to make sure that you're staying calm especially if there's like if you're having like a couple of bad tries or whatever. I think it also happened on Painsmith, Moonkins, on Painsmith. No joke, Moonkins usually are very like combat. Obviously because we have like wild charge and we have dwarf shadows or like soul shape and dash and I don't know what, but you don't have anything to get through these like spiked balls. Like you don't have an immunity, you don't have anything to go through other than like jumping off the platform and disengaging back on, which is, it's doable, but it's definitely scary, right? And so you have to they always have to take like the gateway to get through, or they needed to get bopped, and it just created some problems where you need to die a lot of things. I also saw it for Limit as well, like the Moonkins, they were just dying a lot because it's just difficult for them. While other
You approach a
classes,
powerful servant of the jailer.
Like a gate, automatic circle, I mean, or like an immunity or whatnot. So it must be frustrating to be this class that actually has a really hard time getting to the mechanics, and because of that you're like dying a lot, and people see that, then you're streaming as well, and then it's all of this attention. It's like, why the Mookie's always dying? Why are they always dead, right? And it must be like, I don't know, it must drive you crazy.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's very difficult to stream yourself like failing a thing, and not like, I think it's a very human reaction when you're having issues with a thing to just want to like turn
Take the beast's
like,
power.
okay, we're not going to do
You will
this,
need it for the
publicly.
dangers ahead.
We're not going to do this learning part publicly. I'll turn my stream back on after we've figured out how I'm not going to die at people. So it is rough. Like, you definitely have to,
3,
at
2,
a certain point, just accept
1.
that you're going to get memed and sort of move on with it. But definitely Painsmith a fight that, more than maybe any fight in recent memory, I think Painsmith. Usually there's a group of guys in every guild that are very good at mechanics and at surviving, and you sort of come to expect that those guys, if they get a mechanic, they're going to do it correctly the vast majority of the time. They're pretty safe for certain mechanics. And I feel like I saw it in both like limited like spikes. Like, it didn't matter who got the mechanic. At some point, it's just your turn to die. And so I'm sure that is really frustrating for guys who pride themselves on being able to do mechanics very well and like not making mistakes on fights. That even they're getting
break you into
splinters. It's just very punishing.
Yeah, definitely. And to all the people in chat who are like, Moonkins have this and that, the limit Moonkins, they're just bad. Thanks, chat. We all know that you guys would never die to Painsmith mechanics, but not everyone can be as good as you, chat. Not everyone can be as flawless a player as you guys are. Of course, you go first raters. They just need to sit down and learn a thing or two from you guys.
I would like, it would be a fun.
Beware.
Like the eye level and the newness of the bosses, where I would love to have one of our charity goals be that you, like, by winning this thing, you get to be in
A great
progress
evil lurks
for like
nearby.
5 holes on Painsmith.
Expel it with
and, like,
haste.
just have the one person, just the one guy that's like, I think I could do this, and just show, like, have that person show up and try to do progress rating with them. And then afterwards, like, anytime somebody's like, why are these guys dying to everything? They're so bad. You just, like, run the clip of that guy, and you'd be like, this is what an average person does on progress. And it's just a 99% floor POV.
Yeah. Some people really underestimate just how difficult it is for these people. I mean, obviously these players are just so good at the game, and they still sometimes just fail to these mechanics because it's incredibly hard.
Well fought.
And people just seem
Now
to
claim
think
its
that,
power as your
they're
own.
bad if it happens. And that's one of the things that bothers me the most during the Race to World First, that people call out certain players for making mistakes during progression. And I always think, come on guys, these players are so good, they're probably beating themselves up so much for making their mistakes, right? Because all of these players, as we talked about before, are very competitive. So if they make a mistake, they're already like really, upset about themselves. And they are really good, but mistakes happen, obviously. And then when the whole chat is like, oh, then I was like, come on.
Well, the thing to remember with
you
any of
find your
these
way through the
players
maze?
is that
Choose wisely.
if they were legitimately screwing things up for a guild, like if their mistakes were honestly inexcusable, they would be replaced. Like if the rest of the guild felt that you were a hindrance and that there was like no excuse for your performance, they would just swap you out for somebody else. And so if you're seeing a guy remain in on progress, it's because the other 19 people in the raid are like, yeah, he's our best option here. Like this is, yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, he's dying and stuff, but like anybody would. Like these are just very difficult bosses that are tuned very tightly at this point. And a thing that, we talk about occasionally, but I don't think necessarily really registers with people is how much different these fights are when you're doing it at this eye level. Because there are mechanics that are not, when Blizzard tunes these fights, they tune them around the idea that you have a certain amount of eye level. And it's not this. Like it's not like 234 eye level or whatever, 235 eye level that a lot of these guys are running around in. And so there are mechanics that like might overlap that if you had another 5 or 10 eye level, you would live through it. You'd have enough stamina that you would live through it, and it would be like a close call. You'd be like, whew, that was scary, but you'd be alive at the end of it. But when you do this early on progress, you get that same overlap, and it's like, unless you have a raid-wide damage reduction or personal immunity or something, you die. And a lot of times it can be a very small difference. You find that same thing when you're doing, like when you're pushing keys, that you do something on a certain key level, and you go down to like 5%, and you're like, man, that was really close. And then it occurs to you like, man, if we did this one key level higher, that would have just killed me. Like that, I would actually be dead if we'd been doing this on a 26 instead of a 25. And you have to plan around that of like, what am I gonna do when the amount of damage that comes in is just more than what I'm supposed to be able to live through? How do we design a strat for that?
Yeah, and Blizzard always has some sort of way of nerfing the content, either like actively or passively through gear, through like so many different ways, right? Like in the past, I remember, what was it, gear, where you had like a buff that like increased every week or something.
I don't remember. There was a. Yeah, I remember it. Was it? Okay, I forget now actually. Which?
Something, I think.
Yeah, there was one raid where they just every week they just buffed you by like 5% or something. ICC. Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought it was
ICC as well. Yeah, ICC definitely as well. Uldir as well. And there's and otherwise we also had like other just like nerfs that come directly to the bosses too, where they say, you know what, we're just gonna nerf this ability now. Or sometimes there's hotfixes about certain overlaps or whatever. And then you always have to keep in mind that these guilds, they have killed these bosses without the nerfs. Of course, some nerf they get too if a boss is like unkillable or something, or completely overtuned, then they get the nerfs too, obviously. But then afterwards, there's always more and more adjustments that Blizzard does to bosses. So like the vast majority of the player base can actually kill them or get to them, and then you will never experience that like initial difficulty of the fight, because you will have a lot more gear probably than these guilds had, and you also don't have the version of the boss that these guilds were fighting. So it's sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of a shame that I didn't experience certain bosses the way they were experienced in the World First Race, because that's always something that I told people about when I was participating, because I would always be a person that kills the boss with my method, and then afterwards I joined another guild with my ult, killed the boss again with them. It's just this thing I did, right? So I joined like 4 or 5 different guilds, and I would go down the world rank until I was like world rank 500 or something in a guild, and we would kill the boss like months and months later. And at that point, the boss would be so different that you have a completely different strategy, because you have so much more damage, you're skipping phases, you're skipping abilities, and everything is just so different. And then I always kept saying to the people, if only you knew how this was like 8 months ago, you know? And that's always something that I personally miss nowadays, because I'm still raiding obviously on, like I'm still like world 100 with my guilds, but we don't experience the bosses the same way as these World First guilds do, and we will never do that again unless I somehow I go first raiding again, or I'm in a higher ranked guild. That's definitely interesting to notice.
See, I'm on the other end of the spectrum there, where I watch this stuff and I'm like, I hope this boss gets nerfed 5 times before we play it. I don't want any part of this version. Like, this is Could we get 2 different, domination socket bonuses before we do this boss? Like, if that's possible, just let me know. Yeah, I don't. It's one of those deals where, and it's part of the. It's one of the challenges for the developers.
Beware.
There's some people that mythic grade because they just really love mythic grading. And that's what they're here to do in World of Warcraft. That's the only reason that they continue to subscribe to this game. And there's a lot of World First Raiders who like literally they show up for the race. Put in the prep leading up to it to get their characters ready. They slam the raid. They maybe do a little bit of like heroic sales afterwards to replenish the gold in their guild bank, and then they disappear for like 4 months. And that's it's like boss are dead. I'm out. Like I'm done with the part of World of Warcraft that I like. But then there are other people that mythic grade because you basically have to mythic grade in order to have the gear to do some of the other things in the game. Mythic
Beware.
But PvP also is a thing that often has really good gear from raid, and you feel like if you want to compete at the highest levels of PvP, that you have to go farm raid. And so there are some people that are mythic grading because it's like it's a means to an end. I got to do it. I need the gear.
Beware.
But I don't fetishize it. I'm not in here because I just love bosses and So for those folks, it's like it becomes almost masochistic. That like, I don't want these bosses to be. I don't want to go do these bosses when we're under-geared and the bosses are overtuned. Like I just want to do a boss that's like difficult, but that drops mythic loot. Like that's what I'm here for. Is the part where the boss dies.
Beware.
So if we could get to that part of the boss quickly, I would really appreciate it.
Great job. That's interesting to me. Like it's actually really interesting to me that there are quite a few players who are really passionate about the class. They like raiding, right? And I guess you're one of those players. And I always let's do it again. Because I just thought it's interesting to me because usually it is similar content, right? Of course, one is like 5-man and the other is like it is different in a sense, but it's still PvE and like the goal is the same. Like you're doing something over and over and over, like get it done, right? And usually when someone likes that. The progression kind of thing that you would like in a raid too,
The
right?
Mars
So,
dark
what
magic
exactly do you like
coalesces
about it
here.
plus
Remove it
don't
at the
like about raid?
source.
It's actually very simple for me. It's that I like as a healer being the only healer, and that's part of what drew me to Mythic Plus. Like why I so strongly appreciate the 5-man format is that when I'm in a key, I'm the healer. If somebody's dying, I know it's my job to heal them up.
The creature
and if they
is
die, because they
slain.
didn't get healed, I know
Now,
it's my fault.
claim its power
And
as your
then
own.
the game for me becomes about balancing healing versus damage, and maybe letting somebody sit at lower health, because I know that I've got cooldowns coming up and there's no lethal damage coming in, and so it's this like kind of dance of when to do damage versus when to do healing, and develop a sense of it. And when you play with other healers, there's not that same sense, because now other people are healing, and maybe you see somebody low health and you're like, I know that person's not going to die, but by the time I get cooldowns back up, so it's not really worth my time to throw a heal. Like that'll happen naturally later, but then somebody else like snipes that heal, and now you look like crap on the meters. And I feel like the environment in raiding is, I feel like certain things get prioritized that aren't actually in the best interest of the guild for killing a boss. And actually at the world first level, you do away with a lot of that, because all of that gets dispelled. Everyone knows what the best way to kill a boss is, like which things are important, so you can do away with some of those sort of games that people play in level guilds, like parsing and stuff. Like everybody knows, like, look, dude, you're just padding, or you're overhealing people, and they'll call you out on it. Like, stop doing that. Stop dumping damage into that thing. Like, we all know that that's not important. Put it into this thing instead. Or stop popping your healing cooldown here. We don't need the healing there. We need it later, even if it does more healing now. And so you do away with a lot of that stuff at the world first level. But in keys, I know that I'm the one healer, and it's my job to do the healing, and I love that part of it. And I don't like splitting up the healing responsibilities.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that. I think that's also something that I guess you only really like when it comes to raiding, you only really experience that in a world first guild where you know exactly that every single person in this raid wants to kill the boss and does everything they can do for like the team. Yeah, like everyone's playing for the raid, for the team. You're not gonna see anyone heading on anything. You're not gonna see anyone like just trying to snipe a heal here and there. If there's another healer cooldown assigned, that's gonna be the one that is assigned, right? Like they all trust each other. They all have everything assigned perfectly, and they're playing for the team. You don't have to worry about that. And I do think that as soon as you're not in a World First guild anymore, even if it's still like a World 20 guild, because I mean I was in World 20 guilds, but I was in Future, and I was in like these kind of guilds that are raiding a lot, but are not, you know, like going for World First. And even in those guilds, even though they do have a high ranking, you still have like lots and lots of people who are gonna play for their own game, rather for like the raids game. And that's frustrating. Like that's definitely something that's like there's 20 people, and not all of them are doing everything for like the goal that you all have in mind. And that's definitely, you know, that's something that I personally always hate as well about any guild that isn't a World First raiding guild. But what do you expect, right? Like everyone's trying to have fun, and it's not their job, right? If it's a World First raiding guild, all of a sudden it's their job, and everyone is so competitive and so like so focused on like winning that they're gonna put their own fun or their own like goals behind the team's goals, and that's not something you can expect from like a World 100 guild that is just playing a game for fun, right? So I understand why it is a thing, but at the same time I wish everyone would have that same mindset in like all of the guilds and not just like the World First guild.
Well, and that's one of the things that, you know, going back to things I appreciate about Mythic versus raiding. In raiding, a lot of times guys are there like literally to parse. Like if they kill the boss, great. But like I'm here to get the orange parse. And it's one of the things you actually don't have, and I actually am sort of happy that you can technically submit logs for Mythic Plus, but nobody cares. Nobody checks that. And so I feel like in Mythic Plus you tend to have more of that mentality in your group of like, the only thing that matters is the time you beware. And you don't have, you know, there's nobody that's like, pull a lot of stuff because I'm trying to get my orange parts for the dungeon. They'll say pull a lot of stuff, cooldowns up to no time to key if we pull this, but I feel like people are more selfless in keys because you keep focus on, you know, everyone's goal is time to keep. Whereas when you do raiding, a lot of times that's not really, everyone will say that's their goal. Oh yeah, I'm here to kill the boss, but a lot of people, you know, it's like, well, would you accept killing the boss with a farce? And they'd be like, oh, well, I don't know. You know, it's, would you trade off, you know, 100 ranks on the boss if it meant you had a farce raid? And it's like, well, I don't, you know.
My progeny
and it's like, see, you're not really here to kill the boss. You're here to look good.
Your actions are
beware. I do think more of that focus remains on the team goal in Mythic Plus, and that's another thing I appreciate.
Your ignorance made manifest.
I agree. I think that is very true. This whole team goal thing. Of course, there's some players in Plus that will pet there too. And that's something that I hate even more than petting the raid.
Beware.
You know, when they say, oh, I'm not going to use my
Yeah.
That's also like, I think that happened mainly with like Pride, because people were just so hungry to use their cooldowns with that buff. And I guess, you know, that's just like the DPS mentality. So I do think with Pride that was more of a problem than it is maybe with like other affixes. But yeah, it's definitely like a lot less. Like the problem in raiding, it's just becoming more and more of a thing that people really just want to have the parts. And it's funny because I'm a person that does not care about parses, right? Especially if it's in a boss where you know you have to pet to get the parts. Like for example, Sire and Afterwards, right? On Sire, you stop damage in phase 1, like there's like at damage happening in phase 1 that is kind of irrelevant, but if you're the first one to kill the ads, or if you have a raid that lets you AoE, like if only like 2 people are assigned to AoE, everyone else doesn't touch the ads, then of course you're gonna do more damage overall, right? So these kind of bosses, I don't care about parses because I know it's basically just like you're going for the parse specifically on that boss, otherwise you're not gonna get one. So on those bosses, I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna do whatever, like to be able to kill a boss quicker. I'm just gonna single target the boss, I'm gonna stop damage, heal, off heal, and do all that kind of stuff. And so it ended up, I ended up having great parses on side and afters during all farm. Like I didn't have a single like not great parse because I was again not going for the AoE. I was like healing, doing whatever.
A victory well
I did
earned.
do a lot of boss
You
damage,
have
which is
proven that
important,
none
but
of the
course that's
weapons
not
in
gonna be
Zoval's
parse.
arsenal can
So,
best you.
I did my job, and my guild obviously, you know, they're fine with me doing that because they know it's efficient for them to kill a boss. They don't need me to do the AoE damage. But it's funny because a lot of people were like calling me out for it, like Moonkin players in the community. They were saying, Nagura, you're writing Moonkin guides and you're only great parsing on side and afters. What's going on there? And I'm like, well, listen, I'm like trying to explain all of this stuff to them, but you know they don't care. You know, they're like, oh, she's not having good parses on this boss, she must be bad. You know, and it's like the community has come to this point where you need to do a lot of damage numbers to be considered like a good player on bosses where